Welcome aboard, folks. Here we go with another episode of the Phil Tourney podcast. I'm very, very honored and pleased to have a former shipmate with me today, Ernie Gallo, former president of the Liberty Veterans Association and a good friend. And I want to start off a little different than we've been doing, but first of all, I want everybody to know about your book, Ernie, Liberty and Justice. And I want to show everybody here this book. It's a wonderful book. It needs to be read. Ernie wrote it with his heart and soul. So put that down and be sure you order that book. Ernie, how can they get your book?
You can order from Amazon, all the bookstores. Amazon.com.
Okay.
If you Google my name or to Liberty and Justices, it'll come up.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, everybody out there, please get that book, and it's a good read. It's really a heartfelt book, and person was there. Now, Ernie, I'm not going to go into the attack right now. What I want to do is talk a little bit about, well, actually quite a bit about when you got out of the military. What were your goals and aspirations in your career? What were you planning on doing?
Well, I was basically an electronic technician, and I was trained in cryptology, electronic technology, cryptology. And I guess I wanted to continue in that world. And after the ship was attacked, my duty station was in Washington, D.C., Cheltenham Communication Station, which is on the outside of Andrews Air Force Base. Since I was in Washington, I decided to submit my papers to the CIA, and lo and behold, I was accepted. And so I spent 30 years working for the CIA in communications.
What did you learn working for the CIA all those years and about the USS Liberty?
We were given that order not to talk about it, and I was always taught to trust my elders and my people that were senior to me. And I took it to heart, so I didn't. I was very guarded and didn't discuss the Liberty with many of my workmates. And it was hard. It was very hard because the folks I worked with were truly American patriots to the hilt. And but in 1990, I took the bull by the horns and I sent an internal request, an FOIA request, for all the information that the agency had on the Liberty. And I got a stack of documents. I couldn't believe it. It had to be at least 8 inches thick. Unfortunately, most of the documents were redacted very heavily. But there were some very interesting things in that package. One of which was the report of the naval inquiry. It was the final report. Later on, years later, when I met Admiral Starring at his home in Maryland, he told me that he never saw the report. And as you remember, the naval inquiry report went through him in London for his signature for his boss, the Admiral McCain, whose responsibility was all things naval on the European continent and south. Anyway, with that, I made a copy of the report and gave it to him. And one of the things that occurred, keeping in mind now I'm still working at the agency, but now I'm finding out things were not so kosher, that the things that were said to us were absolute lies. When Admiral Starring read the report, he said he was nothing like the original report that he saw on his desk in London. So we know that laws were broken to sequester the attack. So what did I learn? That not all intelligent groups were bad. Quite contrary, the CIA I worked for then did not play politics. Most of the people that I worked for were upright patriots, and we know that. We know that things that were said at NSA right after the attack by some of their senior people, they were as upset as we were that the attack occurred. So my point is that while we were treated badly, to say the least, and all the cover-up and all the deception that took place was unusual. That's the best way I can put it. It was done for a reason.
Absolutely. And the reason being, when Admiral Starring refused to sign off on that, they went over his head, and in 7 days, they determined it was a mistaken identity when 34 of our brothers, and most of them you knew and you worked with, or they worked for you, that were killed during the torpedo attack. And in 7 days, they concluded it was a mistaken identity when an investigation to be really in depth would take at least a year or more. Did the CIA, your CIA counterparts, did they agree with that assumption?
The deception that I learned, really, all of that occurred after I retired. And once again, I was very guarded as to my discussions about the Liberty. I don't know why. Maybe as I said, I worked for a few Marines um, and a few fellow CT retirees, and of course they knew some of the people that was on board the Liberty that were either killed or wounded or survived. And but we really never got into in depth about the Liberty. At least I don't remember any discussions. But for me, I guess what the hammer that fell on my head was at our 20th anniversary, 1997, and um, I had retired by then. And was when Commander Lewis told us the story about the aircraft being recalled, the details of the aircraft being recalled. Of course, the little bits and pieces were starting to come together in my mind, or the what was happening to us, and got my fire lit.
Okay, Commander Lewis, tell everybody who Commander Lewis was and his mission aboard Liberty.
Within within the Liberty, there was, I think, close to 200 CTs, or communication technicians, and we all worked for Commander Lewis. He was our naval security group boss. Not to take away from our captain, but we of course we all were all respective of the captain's authority, and whatever he told us we had to do, we did. But for instance, the captain didn't have the clearances to come into our spaces. And I know it sounds kind of ridiculous. It's aboard an intelligence ship. Need to know is the marching orders for naval intelligence. If the captain didn't need to know, he did not have the clearances to obtain it. So Commander Lewis was our immediate boss within the communication technicians,
He,
the people who provided the intercept intelligence.
when you came to the first reunion, been a long time ago. We were still kind of young then. Tell me about your experience talking to your fellow shipmates and what they thought about what had happened to us.
Well, it was amazing that there was that we it was we were disappointed and let down, and some of the things we were beginning to hear, like for instance, Stars and Stripes ran at the newspaper. Stars and Stripes ran an article that the Navy was going to name the new littoral combat ships patriotic names, and LCS-2 was going to be the USS Liberty, and that lasted a couple months, and then they stopped using patriotic names after they got by with the USS Independence and LCS-1 and LCS-2, and then they stopped using patriotic names, and the Liberty name was dropped. Now, as it turns out, USS Liberty is the most decorated naval ship for a single engagement ever. Why would you not name a new ship after that kind of relationship? Or the Navy is all about tradition, and the Liberty was the most decorated Navy ship for a single engagement. I would think that would be a name that fellow sailors could have tried to ascribe to. Anyway, so that was there was disappointment. There was some curiosity as to what was going on. What could possibly be going on that the Navy did these things to us? For example, coming back to the Navy Court of Inquiry, we found out that it was a sham. That once again, Navy tradition, they were supposed to do a formal investigation and take interviews and um, testimony like yourself, and all of that was for naught. I mean, there were people like Lloyd Painter, Lieutenant Lloyd Painter, who was no slouch, and he saw the Israelis' machine gun our life rafts as they floated by, and that testimony was mysteriously lost in the Navy Court of Inquiry. So, what what was the why is this mystery that things happened the way they did, and we were being treated the way we were? I mean, it didn't make sense. Didn't make sense at all. And when you think about it historically, you begin to wonder: did we do something wrong? Did we do something that would embarrass the Navy or our country? And far be it. Far be it. There was a faction starts, I believe, with our president LBJ. He orchestrated the cover up. I think we became a target of opportunity to suit his political ambitions.
Ernie, when you talk about that reunion, it brings up a lot of memories, and I agree with you. It was a lot of tension and a lot of relief to see everybody, but well, we
Yeah.
all wondered why. We survived by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God. All glory goes to Jesus Christ for saving us. Nobody else come to help us. But when here you have a flag admiral come aboard our ship and talk to the rest of the crew that was still there, where did you get debriefed out, and who did it?
Well, I think it was Admiral Kidd. I mean, and it was Admiral Kidd. And it was kind of interesting for me to continue on in my CT duties, especially at Cheltenham Communication Station. The order that no one was to talk about it, I mean, it was solid. I mean, there were, um, you, in fact, a little bit of a side story. I went to work one day at Cheltenham, and I received this invitation to go to the Navy Yard to help celebrate our captain getting the Medal of Honor. And I remember when I got the invitation, my jaw hit my workbench. I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, "Are they kidding? We're not supposed to talk about this. And why is it being held at the Navy Yard?" That was strange. He was getting the Medal of Honor. Anyway, the only way it was just odd and confusing as for me that things just did not sit well, or I could kick myself a million times today. I took that invitation and tossed it in the trash. I didn't go. I guess I was too scared to go at that point. I didn't know what to expect after being, like you said, Admiral Kidd read us the riot act, and it sounded pretty serious. Now, as a CT, we didn't talk about what we did anyway, but it didn't take rocket science to realize something was very wrong now at that point in time for me. And I just wanted to do my time and look forward to becoming a civilian.
Absolutely, as I did too. With the admiral and his underling, Ward Boston, interrogated us, and none of my testimony was entered into the record either. And I saw a lot of things that I talked about and said and wondered why, and I was scolded for it. I'll never forget that. A person of that stature to come in there and berate us for telling the truth about the people that almost killed us all, shooting the life rafts, napalmed us, 2-hour attack, unmarked jets, marked torpedo boats, and nobody come to help us. They tried. Captain Tully did, and also Captain Ingan off the America. They both tried. Captain Tully twice, Captain Ingan once, and they were both recalled. And you know the story about Terry probably better than I do, because you were in that era. He was a radioman, and he worked for Commander Lewis. What do you think of how that worked when they got rid of all of our antennas that quick within 3 seconds and our 450 caliber machine guns?
Well, yeah, the overflights that morning, the 12 overflights that we logged, they were doing their job. They were laying out, I guess, how they were going to attack the ship. And our transmit antennas, of course, any transmit antenna, the base of the antenna is going to give off heat. And so therefore, after those overflights especially, now they could identify which antennas were transmitting. And there was one antenna that was not in use because it was so inefficient. The SWR was so high that the radiomen realized not to use that antenna. They tagged it for when the next time we were in port that it would be worked on. So that's the antenna the Terry attacks. They shot at and destroyed each one of the working antennas. So Terry realized that that one antenna was still standing, and that's the one he ran his coax to when we finally got word out that we were under attack. Otherwise, yeah, no. Like the grace of God, we didn't sink, and they wanted that ship to sink for sure. Terry risking life and limb, dodging these aircraft that were shooting at us and anything that moved, and he ran this coax up to this antenna, and thank God, because maybe if we never transmitted the fact that we were under attack. We were attacked in phases. The first phase was the aircraft. The next phase was the motor torpedo boats. And then the third phase, which we sometimes overlook, is two helicopters with armed troops on board. We believe we're going to get on board somehow and take care of the rest of the crew. I mean, they wanted that ship silenced badly. So by the time those two helicopters arrived, possibly they were beginning to realize that the Sixth Fleet was about to either sending planes or, I don't know if they knew that planes were recalled, but the time was running out. And plus the fact that I can't imagine where they possibly could have dropped troops down onto the ship, because we were listing at 9 degrees, and you had to see our ship was it was nothing but antennas, stem to stern, 43 antennas. And it would have been very dangerous for those troops to just get off the helicopters and come aboard. I don't know if they did the rope thing from the helicopter then or not, but it would have been very dangerous for them to even come aboard. And the other thing I remember, if I could bring that part up, is that we were in a passageway. Our postal clerk had just died, and Lieutenant Maurice, I can't think of his last name at the moment. Anyway,
Maurice Bennett.
Bennett, yes, thank you. I remember saying to him, well, they announced that be prepared for repel boarders, and I thought to myself, well, yeah, how are we going to repel boarders? I said, Mr. Bennett, we need to get to the arms locker. And he said, no, we'll wait for the captain to give us orders. In the meantime, Phil is trying to get into that arms locker to repel these boarders, and wasn't successful. They have it locked really well.
Yes, it was, Ernie. It was locked very well. But fortunately, they were trying to get it on the only place they could really try to get on that ship safely was the forecastle, because there was no antennas there. That's the only place. And that's where they picked up the wounded too, is off the forecastle.
No, but it was getting dark, and we're listing 9 degrees, and it had to be very intimidating, I would think. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm glad they didn't get on board, because we wouldn't be talking right now.
That's right.
So there was a lot of miracles that day, a lot of miracles. I want to go through what our organization has been trying to do with the War Crime Commission. Back in, I believe it was 2005, we submitted a war crimes report, and the government would not look into it, even though it's mandated by U.S. law. And we did that not once, but twice submitted it. And guess what? Nobody's ever gotten back to us. I wonder why.
Yeah, in fact, I'm one of the signatures of that report, and that was spearheaded by Admiral Starion and a Los Angeles lawyer, and very well done. It focused on all of the war crimes that we witnessed. Yeah, in fact, it was submitted on June 8th, 2005. President Bush at the time was concerned that during the Iraq War, that any war crimes that could have been committed, that there would be a venue to expedite a war crimes report, and so that the army would immediately address the whatever report that they received. So that's one of the rationale. Let's get on board this train to see what happens. And nothing happened for the longest time. And then we found out that no, they weren't going to take any action because the Navy Court of Inquiry found that the Israelis, it was a question of mistaken identity. We were slam dunked. That I really thought that we had a chance with that war crimes report. Irrespective of the Navy Court of Inquiry, we factually gave them the details of what we saw. Any other group, I guess, but I would think that anybody cared about justice and honor would have taken that report and said, we ought to get these guys in here under oath to see if this holds up, if this really happened. No way, Jose. That was not about to happen. You kick that rock over, and there's going to be a whole bunch of critters under that rock. They're going to come out, and they didn't want that to happen. As I've said earlier, laws were broken, and possibly that people might have gone to jail for what happened, for either actions or lack of actions that happened during the attack. If you go by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, you cannot leave a wounded soldier on the battlefield. And here we are, a ship under attack, and we're pleading for help. We didn't know who it was, because at that time we didn't. Could have been the Soviets. And Admiral Geis, the commander of the Sixth Fleet, Raymond Geis, he, like Captain Tully, responded in the way he should have and immediately launched planes, and then to have it by our Secretary of Defense. Give me a break. I mean, that man, McNamara, his hands are so dirty, as far as I'm concerned, both for Vietnam and other things that happened. The man should have gone to jail. And then when he was asked about the Liberty later on in life, as smart as he was, he couldn't remember a thing about the Liberty. Not a thing.
No, he couldn't. You could see the fear in his eyes when he said that too. I know nothing about the Liberty.
Right.
Nothing, as you said. The war crimes, I'm going to go back to that. The Naval Board of Inquiry in 7 days said it was mistaken identity. So here we are in 205 filing a war crimes report. And even though they could have said it was a mistaken identity, it was still war crimes, what they did to us.
Absolutely.
So how deep does it go, Ernie? This cover-up of our gallant crew, the gallant ship of USS Liberty, is the spearhead of breaking the passion and attachment to the Zionist state of Israel. And it's like people like you and our other crewmates and other people that's going to be on this program to tell everybody the truth. It's our honor and our dignity to do that. And I think that's why God kept us alive. Your thoughts?
You are hitting a nerve for me, because yes, that is something I have long prayed about. And I didn't get involved with the USS Liberty Veterans Association until well after I retired. And in the beginning, like I said, I was so nervous about it. But then again, I got to the point where and this is where the crew of the Liberty, where my heart is coming from. That boy, they picked on the wrong crew to do this to, because we're just everyday sailors doing our job, and we have lived through people not doing the right thing in support of our mission of doing the wrong thing many times over. And yet, why? What was happening that that they would be doing this to us? Keeping him, like for instance, Admiral Kidd had to be involved. McCain in London, he had to know. I mean, there's the commander of the Sixth Fleet, Martin. They could have They could have said, "No, I'm not doing this. These are these are sailors that you're doing this to. That I wouldn't put up with it." But no, they didn't do that. So one of the facets of our story that one of the things I'm fighting for, or I'd like to see addressed, is that even today, president can give an order to a flag officer that is totally against the UCMJ. And still, I mean, and so if that flag officer says, "I'm not doing that," he could be fired at that moment or his career's over. That needs to be addressed. Those the flag officers or any other military individual need something to fall back on. It's supposed to be the UCMJ, but we know that don't work. But something needs to happen where even a president can't go against the UCMJ, or if he does, can be taken to task for it. I don't know how you do that with presidential immunity, but let's put it. We were in the Navy at the wrong time. LBJ considered the military as fodder. It didn't he all he cared about was his political butt. And that's so that when things like that happen and you get in their way, um and LBJ was a crude son of a gun. He was not a nice man from everything I've read. And I could see him giving these orders, and these flag officers went along with it. And it should have never happened. So that needs to be addressed. The crew of the USS Liberty are fantastic. We've 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 kept we've stayed together and through a lot of weird things happening. And believe me, when we start making a difference, when we start really hitting home, where let's say a movie is made of the Liberty story, and all these facts come out, our lives will, how can I put it, will get very interesting. I don't think what happened to us and the continuation of this our pleas and our focus and our what we strive for is what we're trying to accomplish, right, in the worst way, that our government can't do it alone. There's got to be some other entity that is keeping this story sequestered, and especially true now. I mean, it's very obvious of what they're doing on the news media, of what they're doing to the news media, that are anybody following history, anybody that's been following what's been happening in the Middle East will realize some other entity has to be pulling these strings for these people to react the way they do. These are very intelligent people in the past, and all of a sudden, these Palestinians don't have a right to crap. Pardon my my being crude, but you see where I'm coming from? That there's another entity out there that's working overtime to make sure this story don't get told.
Absolutely, Ernie. And the people that control you, you're not allowed to criticize. And that's going on right now in Congress. They're trying to make a law where you can't really criticize the Zionist state of Israel. And I don't know if that's going to work or not, or how that's going to pan out. I guess we're both going to go to jail for that one. But the United States government in 1967, I think they planned this event about a year in advance for the USS Liberty, particularly because of its name. It's not like sinking the USS Belmont, but sinking the USS Liberty is American. It means something, liberty. Dick Thompson said, go think about Frontlet 615. And he was another CIA guy. You know that. Think about that. You'll uncover everything if you can get a hold of that. And of course, the 303 committee. We know about that. That was to cover Johnson's rear end. But you're right about what's going on in the Middle East now. How can anybody in their right mind or have a heart or believe in just human dignity? You don't have to, I'm not saying you have to believe in God like I do or you, just human dignity, not suffer pain and heartache over this. And I can't stand to watch it on social media anymore. I have to flip through it. There's like on Instagram and so many other outlets, it drives me crazy. I just feel terrible. We went through a 2-hour vicious attack. These people have been going through it since October the 7th. Think about, I see little kids shell-shocked, shaken. They're just, oh my God, kids with no arms, no feet, or just buried under rubble. I mean, just starved to death. But our government's supporting it. So pulling the strings, yeah, somebody's pulling the strings. It's the government of Israel. It's the Zionist state of Israel. The bankers control all the money. The Epstein files, we were promised that by President Trump, and that didn't pan out. And so from LBJ recalling aircraft along with McNamara, as you talked about, we were set up to sink and blame it on Nasser, Egypt, because they hated Nasser. And LBJ was all in on Vietnam, like you said. That was another, like you said, cannon fodder deal. We were nothing more than that, but to get us into World War III, sink us and to get us into World War III. And I'm sure you know about this, Ernie. There were SAC aircraft on the way to bomb Egypt even before our ship got attacked. So we survived something that no other. How? Jesus Christ is the only reason how. And that makes me strong. And to be part of that group, part of the Liberty, I wouldn't have changed a thing. Even if we went down, I wouldn't have changed a thing because I wasn't going to get out there and try to let them shoot me. I was going down with the ship if we go down, period. I already made that up. So, and you're right about Gaza and what's going on in the world. And the UN ambassador vetoed a bill to have a ceasefire or whatever. I mean, come on, what's going on here with our government? And how are you taking that?
I've threatened to throw things at my TV. I can't believe some of the things that are being said. And you're so right about what happened in October. And the crazy thing is they keep referring to Hamas as being this terrible group. Remember PLO, the Palestine
Arafat.
Yeah,
Arafat.
There was a period of time that no American official could talk to Arafat, weren't allowed to talk to him. Otherwise, they'd be hauled up in front of Congress and given rebuked or whatever. Anyway, it's hysterical. And then all of a sudden, things changed. And with Arafat in mind, the PLO, there were treaties that were signed. The Oslo Accords, the Camp David Accords. These were treaties that Israel signed and said, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Then Ariel Sharon came into the picture, and he was their prime minister, and said he wasn't going to have any of that. They weren't going to get any of those things. Just decided to tear up whatever those treaties. And matter of fact, he was going to kill every PLO that was out there, and invaded country next to Israel, Beirut, Lebanon. They chased the PLO all the way to Beirut. And it got to the point where Ariel Sharon was going to kill anybody that got in their way, that he was going to take out these PLO. PLO was their political arm of the Palestinians. So, all right, I'm not going into the details, but the PLO was allowed to leave, and they all went their merry way. So what did the Palestinians do? They needed a political arm to represent them. Enter Hamas. All right. Now, all the books that have been written, charities that have been out there trying to help the people in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and the kids are getting killed. The Israeli army says, you got to live within this strip. You can't come out of this strip unless we tell you can. So we're going to build a barrier to keep you in. And we don't want your kids playing or doing anything outside that barrier. As a matter of fact, we're going to create these little homes called kibbutz, that we're going to allow our people to live in for free. And they'll keep an eye on this wall. So keep you in this wall. All right. That's what the Gazans were faced with as they approached October. If you got these horrible people on the other side of this barrier who I mean, they don't think much of you as a human. They don't think much, and they don't want to. Your kids better not get in their way. They're going to take them out. You don't think that gets to the parents of the people who live in Gaza. Life in that area was not very nice, to say the least. And I think from things I've been hearing about what's going to happen to Gaza next brings maybe some finality, because I'm also hearing that uh, even though there are certain countries that have recognized um, the second state um, already, that no, they're not going to. The Israeli government's not going to entertain a two-state solution. So what can happen to Gaza next? I mean, it's just nothing but rubble. You know, it's right next to the Mediterranean. Wasn't the Mediterranean a really neat, nice body of water? I mean, could you imagine resorts being built on the Gaza Strip? You know, that would be pretty nice. I mean, it can compete with the Riviera. They could compete with, let's see, Mallorca. All these really nice beaches. I mean, they could really make that Gaza Strip pretty attractive for anybody who would like to go to one of these resorts. Now, what's going to happen to the people that live there now? I don't know. Who knows? But I will also pose this to you. What's going to happen to the people that live on the West Bank? Everybody's forgetting about them. What did the Israelis do with them? I mean, and in this group, now you also have Christians, the Holy Land, all those churches in the Holy Land. What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to the rest of the Palestinians that live there? Where are they going to go? Let's see, maybe East Jerusalem that used to belong to them, but no, they've annexed that. I don't know. Where do they go? Do they go to Lebanon? Do they go to some other country nearby? But they've done that already. I don't know. They're gonna. So getting the Liberty crew and what we're after. I guess the definitive word is justice for us, and maybe, just maybe, if we get justice, the fallout may be very extreme, and maybe that's what they're worried about. I don't know. I've read so much, and I mean, I would have never paid attention to the Middle East, but the attack on the Liberty got my attention, and I'm just amazed at things that are being said now, like these things have never happened. The PLO, Arafat, the what Ariel Sharon did, and Netanyahu, who's following him step by step, and they continue to. I mean, and I don't think that they would have the success that they're having, or the ease of success, if the American public was not in their hip pocket.
I agree, Ernie, totally. When I think of October the 7th, and I thought this immediately when it happened, you know this as well as I do. The fences, the barriers, the electronic equipment, the cameras. You couldn't put a kitten next to any wall or any part around Israel that they wouldn't know about it. But suddenly they pulled everything back. I don't know what happened. They blamed it on this guy and that guy. So was it a setup, just like the USS Liberty? And I totally believe, Ernie, uh, the land grab that they got in 1967, if we would have sunk, this war wouldn't be going on right now, because they'd already taken it all right then. Because here you got 294 American sailors and Marines at the bottom of the ocean, and Egypt did it. The American people would be crying for blood, for oceans of it, and they would have got it. Us not sinking stopped World War III, and there's no telling how many lives were saved because of that, because that's what they wanted. But by the grace of God, we were still here. And I want to digress a little bit into a little about Captain Ward Boston, on the Board of Inquiry, and before he died, the declaration he put out. And I was really, really happy to see that. I wish it had come earlier, but at least we have it. And your thoughts on Captain Boston?
It's a shame he didn't come out of the closet earlier, but
Yeah.
it is one of those things that keeps you going, keeps you fired up. That every now and then some little thing happens. I don't want to make light of the fact, because it was a major thing for him to come out of the closet and tell us in no uncertain terms that he was ordered to do the things that he did and remain quiet about it all those years. And boy, the impact of his couldn't have happened at a better time, because you remember, and I know you know this because you were there. But at the State Department, they had that meeting where they were going to talk about the Middle East, and the Liberty was not really going to be a subject, but because they were really going to talk about the Middle East. But it just so happens that the people that were addressing the group, most of them were Israeli writers, Israeli. There are two Americans that were in this group, was Jim Bamford and our nemesis.
AJ Crystal.
Anyway, boy, this thing really, I mean, this thing turned into a Liberty Fest. Hell, everybody was saying that, that it was a mistaken identity and all of this. In the meantime, Phil and a number of other Liberty survivors were in the audience. And anyway, so when Jim Bamford was his turn to speak, he read off Ward Boston's confession, and it was awesome. I mean, because it really pulled the carpet or the rug right out from under them. The whole effort to put a nail on the Liberty coffin once and for all. And then they opened it up for comments and questions afterwards. And as soon as they found out that Liberty crew was ready to speak, they killed the mic, right?
Yes, they did. Mark Susser, I'll never forget him. People were saying, let them speak, let them speak. And they would not. But, that was a kangaroo court, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, right in our own State Department, I thought we would get a little respect. But, if you're a USS Liberty survivor, you don't get much respect. But that's okay. We're not in here for glutz and glory. We're in here for America and our families and our grandkids and their kids. That's what this is about for me. Standing up for the 34 men that were slaughtered that day. Most of them you knew. And the 174 wounded. Ship so badly damaged, they had to scrap it. And government that betrays us. They betrayed us then. They're still betraying us. But we're still here. We are the spearhead, Ernie. The survivors are the spearhead that could break the back of the Zionist attachment to Israel. I mean, this is our time. I really think if we ever got a time, it's our time because of alternative media, podcasts like this and others. Candace Owens, she's always top of it. Jake Shields, there's so many more. Clayton Morris, and just on and on and on. But Fresh and Fit, Myron Gaines, everybody's waking up, and the younger generation is waking up. And Charlie Kirk, God bless his soul, they put him to rest today, I believe, was coming around, and he was talking about Israel, and he refused $150 billion from Netanyahu to kind of tamp it down on the Israel stuff, the Epstein files, and on and on. Then he invited him to I guess, be reindoctrinated or reorganized or brainwashed, and he refused to go. Because he was just talking the truth about what's going on with Israel, and it got him killed. Your thoughts on that?
Once again, you're in another nerve. And by the way, what you're saying is so true. Thank God. And I got to compliment you on doing this. I used to give presentations at civic veteran groups, religious groups would want to hear what I had to say about the Liberty, and it kind of died off. But and now we set this up for this interview just this weekend. I mean, after all this time, just this weekend, I've received a letter. I've got in front of me on Friday, unbelievable letter from a fellow sailor, and I got a phone call this afternoon and he wanted to talk so badly that I had to, because we were leaving anyway, I had to arrange a time where we're going to talk tomorrow. But yeah, going back to the religious side of this to some degree, because that needs to be, I guess, needs to be talked about. One of our reunions, I was asked to give an interview at a church, in Washington, D.C. or Northern Virginia. And this was a well-to-do church. They had a website, and this parish would normally do interviews, or they did interviews or whatever, and then put it on their website. So before the interview, the pastor and I were talking, and I said something about Palestinians that I guess he objected to, didn't like. I'm not going to name the religion or that group, but I think you'll pick up on it. He immediately said to me, or came at me and said, "Don't you believe in the Bible?" I said, "Sure I do." He says, "Well, don't you know that in order for the second coming of Christ, Israel's got to be made whole again?" And now this is a Christian pastor telling me that in order for the second coming of Christ, in other words, the end of days, in order for that to happen, Israel's got to be made whole again. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm thinking Jesus Christ would agree that you can do whatever it takes to reclaim this land that Israel gave up or whatever. I'm just saying that Israel's got to be made whole again. That, it's okay to kill whatever. I mean, what happened to thou shalt not kill? What happened to Jesus' message of love thy neighbor? Or wait a minute, was it just love your fellow Jew? No, I don't think so. It was that wasn't in the Ten Commandments. It was love thy neighbor. Period. That's everybody. I gave the interview and it did come off all right, but boy, that interchange with this pastor, I'll never forget. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, there is a group out there that truly believe that this has got to happen before the second coming of Christ. I can't believe that, think this is okay. You can do whatever to the Palestinians, just so long as this happens.
Well, it's a sad story, but there's many churches like that. I spoke at one too, and I was treated well. I won't name the church or the pastor or nothing like that, but it had an Israeli flag outside, and I was invited to speak, and I did. I told them the Liberty story, and it was like, are you anti-Semitic? No, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just trying to tell the truth about the USS Liberty. But there's churches like that all over the country that you just explained so well, Ernie, that are in that group. And the power of disinformation and what the Bible really means is, and which has been fed into us for years and years and years, just like the rotten news has been fed into us. It becomes a habit, and you can't change your ways. But if you really want to meet Jesus Christ, you better change your ways. That's my viewpoint. I'll go on to another subject, Ernie. I was really happy to see you in D.C. at the Army Navy Club when we gave Admiral Moore the first USS Liberty Memorial Award. I know I saw you. I saw you, buddy. I was so happy to see you. That award meant more to him than any medal he's ever received. He's had many of them. I think he got Silver Stars, Purple Hearts, just everything. And he said after the event, and it was very heavy. It was a beautiful, beautiful bronze made, thanking the Admiral for standing by us. But he said that's the best award he's ever received in his life. The former chairman of Chiefs of Staff, and he loved us. And your thoughts on Admiral Moore, please.
What a wonderful man. I mean, here's a guy that is at the top of his game, the very top of his game, but he could identify with those sailors. He could identify with us, and he risked everything. I mean, I'm sure he was criticized. Dick Thompson and I drove up from Florida for his funeral. It was a very tedious January. I'm talking about the weather, typical January. And we almost got caught in a snowstorm coming back. Or no, we did get caught, but we worked around it. Anyway, the funeral was awesome. And I also have to mention the troops that were assigned to march in his funeral. Had to be at least 100 sailors. And although we were in the chapel, it was pouring rain, cold rain outside, that these sailors had to stay in formation at parade rest. I cried out for them anyway, but I'm trying to paint a picture here of the weight of this. He was a 4-star admiral. He did it all. And as I said, he was chairman, or you said he was chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. And anybody and everybody of importance was there at the funeral. We had a good representation from the Liberty crew. I remember Smitty was there. I can't remember what, there was somebody else there besides us. But what a tremendous. Anyway, he had a friend, and I'm not going to remember the ad, but on his Admiral Moore's deathbed, on his deathbed, he whispered to this admiral to take up, is to continue to fight for the Liberty crew. And well, he was fairly, I mean, this admiral was fairly old. I don't know what happened, but the fact that, I mean, this was mentioned at the funeral in front of all these people. So, I was taken aback. I felt so good, so honored that we had Admiral Moore that cared for us. I mean, really cared for us, that on his deathbed, he was thinking of us. If only we could reach politicians the way we have been able to reach some of the naval hierarchy, maybe we would be able to get someplace. I guess. I don't know. But yeah, Admiral Moore was one fantastic officer of the Navy.
Yes, yes, he was, and it was my great honor to sit next to him and meet him and talk to him, and there were so many great people there at that ceremony. The whole place was packed with nothing but admirals and generals, and, I mean, everybody loved Tom Moore,
Yeah.
and, you know
I can't think of his name right. He was Medal of Honor himself was present. Yeah. And ambassadors were also there. There was a couple ambassadors there too.
James
I
Akins was there. He was one of the ambassadors, I believe.
Yes.
Tito Howard did a good job, kind of getting that together. Give him all the credit for that. Tito was a patriot too. He wanted us to be successful. We did that film, Loss of Liberty. It was just a start. And here we are, old men, sticking by our guns, loving our country. I don't love our politicians. I'll tell you why. 90% of them are in the hip pocket of AIPAC. Was there 250 went over there and kissed the ring and came back. So we're an occupied government. That's my belief. I'll always believe that. When you can set American sailors and Marines to be murdered, 294 of us can get by with it. And James Aiken said this very well. If they can get by with that, they can get by with anything, and they are getting by with it right now. But again, I'll mention the USS Liberty is the spearhead. If they had just listened to us and give us our day in court, they said there have been 5 congressional investigations. There's never been one. Be prepared to get lied to if you write Congress about the USS Liberty, because they're covering up one of the biggest scandals this country's ever seen, close to probably on par with JFK, because I think the same people that killed him tried to kill us. 9/11. All the puzzles fit together, Ernie. They all fit, and nobody is ever held accountable. I just how far gone are we? All the wars had been fought since Vietnam on, or forever. Let's go back. World War I on. But we were invited to the White House by George H. Bush. You were there, weren't you, Ernie?
No one wasn't, but I know.
Well, right. Now we were invited there. Okay, sorry. My battery's running low.
Listen, at our age, we all run out of gas.
Okay, I'm all plugged in. Yeah, Ernie, you didn't make it to the ceremony at the White House, but we were invited there by George H. Bush. They wanted to meet with us, and we thought, wow, something's going to happen. And this is during the first Gulf War. They had a parade or something, and we were still promised he was going to be there, and he got there. He just waved out of his limo, and that was it. And Brent Scrowcroft and I forget the other guy's name. They came out there, and John Sununu. They came out there and said, well, the president's too busy to see you. And the old man was there in dress whites. We'd been out in the Rose Garden for an hour and a half in 90-degree heat, and, the humidity there, and it was awful. But they snubbed the Medal of Honor. They snubbed all of us, and they said, you guys want a tour? And I was so furious. Oh, man, I wasn't going to throw a fit on the White House lawn. I didn't go to the penitentiary. But we did the little tour and come out, but everybody was saddened and disappointed. We got kicked in the teeth again and again and again. And that brings me to another subject. Glenn Oliphant and you went to a national convention. I wish you'd please tell us about that and what happened.
Well, we like to go to the American Legion and VFW conventions at that time every year, and we would get a booth and pass out literature and talk to anybody who wanted to find out about the Liberty. So this particular year, I don't remember the year, but Glenn and I, we thought we intended to go to the like reunion. I mean, we thought our $1,000 was paid, and that we would get our table and set it up. So that morning, we went to our designated point in the building to find out where our table was going to be. And they said, no, you don't have a table. I thought we had sent our $1,000 in. So we called Mo Schaefer to find out. And somehow or another, it got under the carpet or whatever. And the money was not sent. So we went back to this gal and said, we'd like to charge our $1,000 and we still like to get a table. I mean, we're both of us had traveled across the country to get to this convention. And she said, just a minute. And she made a phone call. Next thing you know, this gal shows up with 3 heavies, the best way I can, security with her. And her message was, you ain't getting a table today or any day. We don't want you here. And the two of us went, what? I mean, we were at the last year's convention, all right? And she's saying, no way, Jose, are you going to get a table? Well, I wasn't a member of the American Legion, but Glenn was, and he was fit to be tied. I mean, because she was treating us like we were filth. So he went into his wallet and got his American Legion card, and he tossed the card at her. Unfortunately, she was wearing a somewhat low-cut blouse, and the card went down her crevice. Well, it hit the fan. So now he's being charged with assault. So they march us out of the convention building. And meantime, they called the police. And police came and whisked Glenn away for assault. This terrible thing of him flicking that card at her was assault. Anyway, one of our supporters, Ted Aarons, was there, and him and I got together, and we spent the day at the jail where they were holding Glenn. They wouldn't allow us to talk to anybody, and we tried pleading with them this is crazy. This is ridiculous. Now, the rest of the story is that the very top of the American Legion, nothing but good support from the American Legion posts, and especially VFW. The VFW has always been our proud supporters. But the American Legion, the very senior crust, the very top group, did not want us around anymore. Why? Because they didn't like the message that we were talking about, this thing that Israel did to the ship. And it wasn't until midnight that they finally released Glenn. And what a terrible thing to experience. And he had to do some public service. I think he paid a small fine or something. I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember that detail. But from that time on, we have been not allowed to, nor do we ever want to attend another American Legion convention. That's one of those stories. That's one of the reasons I had to write my book. That there is an America out there that people won't believe, that things happen. Things are, in other words, within this Israeli lobby, there are people of power. They will use it to make sure our story don't get told. And that's the long and short of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, when I heard what happened to you guys, I said, oh, man, come on. And then I heard he got thrown in a slammer and had to plead guilty to something or just to get out of there or whatever. I don't know, but he got a raw deal. And that's what you get for being a USS Liberty survivor at a veterans group that is supposed to love all veterans for their service. I mean, we're the most decorated ship in the naval history. and they throw you out and treat you like dirt because you're telling the truth about the USS Liberty and try to educate people instead of make them like be a bunch of sheeple, and you can't tell the truth. I mean, that's how deep this cover up goes, Ernie. It's disgusting. It's totally un-American. And you're right, from LBJ and down to Johnson. I mean, McNamara and McCain, all of them were in that circle of deceit and lies to keep this covered up, and we're still here. So why are we still here fighting this? And I'm proud to do it. I know you are too. But it just inspires me very much to continue on with this as long as I can, and I know you will too. But it has become a mission for me, and that's why I'm doing it. And I know it's a mission for you. You know, I'm doing it for all the right reasons. For America, man, we got to wake up. And I think your testimony today is powerful as you can get. You couldn't ask for anything better than that. Truthful, honest, and direct. And if there's anything like you'd like to add, please do it.
I thank you so much, Phil, for doing this. Yes, you're an inspiration, and my shipmates have been an inspiration. My internal inspiration is my Lord. And after praying on it, yeah, I am normally a closet introvert, but for some reason, the Lord has given me a voice to talk about this Liberty incident and to do homework, to look into all these facets and be vocal about it. Yeah, I don't know when our day is coming, but maybe at the Lord's plan, at the right moment, maybe then and only then will our story finally be known to the American public. I just, not so much to be honored or anything like that. I just don't want to ever see it happen again to anybody. There's things that need to be done to fix it. So yeah, I want to see this fixed, done. And all right, if this group of people that want to create Israel, fine, but they also need to realize that there are others that are either followers of Christ or followers of Allah, and they need to respect that. And if our story then gets to the point where that makes a difference, then so be it. Then all of this is from that we we can't do any more than to lift our voices and be heard. I think I said at one of our reunions that we're not going to go quietly into the night. We can't do that. There's things that were done that were absolutely wrong that need to be corrected. Call it justice for us. As I said, we've discovered that there are some mechanisms that need to be fixed. The fight is on. We'll continue on. And God willing, I hope you are tremendously effective in spreading the word. You have all these years, and I'm proud to be with you. I'm right there under Ron Kugel, right under. I mean, nobody gets before Ron.
God rest Ron's soul.
Amen.
Amen to that. He was a great guy. We went, Mo and I went up to his funeral, and it was very somber. It was really tough on Connie, his wife, and his whole family, in fact. But he's in a better place now. So that brings us to this, Ernie. I want to thank you, and Ron Kugel always led us in prayer, and we need another chaplain. You might consider that, if you'd like to, and if you'd like, just lead us in prayer, and we'll close out this interview.
Okay. Dear Lord, you've given us grace to do your will, and you're fighting troops for honor and truth. We will continue on as best we can to do your will, and continue to give us the grace to say the right things and to be part and parcel to your to reach salvation for everyone. We couldn't find a more purposeful or master to serve. Lord Jesus Christ, be with us, champion us, please. Please keep us in mind. We are yours to do with as you need. Believe in Jesus Christ and God, Father, and Jesus, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you so much, Ernie. God bless you, brother. It's been a wonderful, wonderful interview, and it'll come out, I think, Friday of next week. So, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Phil. Whatever I can do to help, just let me know.
Yes, sir, I will.